We've got round 7 of the 2025 GT Cup Championship coming up for you here at the hugely picturesque Brands Hatch circuit. Whilst over the winter there's been a clearance of some diseased trees in the centre of the circuit, which means there's probably a bit less greenery than there has been in the past. It's still a challenging circuit. Once you head out onto the Grand Prix section, you're amongst the trees. The barriers are very tight. There's very little runoff. It's a proper challenge, is the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. And for the final time this weekend, for round 7 of the championship, the GT Cup Championship competitors make their way out onto circuit for their final sprint race of the weekend. Now, this sprint race is based, the grid, on the fastest times that were set in the first part of the pit stop race that we saw earlier on today, if you joined us for that one. The reason that we don't count any fastest times in the second part of that pit stop race is because that's when the pros get on board. And it's really focused, this championship, on the amateur driver. So it's the times that they set when they were behind the wheel of the car in the first part of the pit stop race that give us this grid and the way that they will line up. There is one car that has fallen by the wayside. We knew earlier on that the number 28 Brabham of Paul Bailey and David Brabham, so the number 28 McLaren of Paul Bailey and David Brabham, was not going to make the pit stop race. Well, now the number 240 McLaren from Greystone GT has had problems, and that will not take the start. But we can see that the pole sitter is there, Mark Smith, who is hoping for good things here at Brands Hatch. You can see down on the grid a few people looking towards the skies, and the noise above me will tell me that the Spitfire's just come over. I could just hear the whirl of the Merlin engines from our commentary box as it went over. So it's an all McLaren front row of the grid, this one. So it will be Mark Smith and Darren Kell that will line up on the front row of the grid. We'll give you the full grid once it is fully formed and they're on their formation lap. You can just see a little bit of extra ducting being taken off the front of that McLaren there. Maybe they were expecting some slightly cooler temperatures for this race, and now that they've realised that the air temp is where it needs to be, or maybe just to build a bit of engine temperature on the outlap, so you cover up those ducts and that helps build some extra engine temperature in the car. They've now removed that from the front of it and the little bits on either side, and we'll be good to go with that car, which is prepared by Tracked Focused. Of course, with this being the sprint race, there's just single drivers on board. So again, we've been notified of all of the drivers we are expecting to see behind the wheel for this 25-minute sprint race. I say it looks as though everybody's there, with the exceptions of the cars that we were expecting. The number 28 McLaren of Paul Bailey, not there. The number 240 McLaren of Andre Borodin, not there. That was retired by Ollie Webb in the pit stop race earlier on. So the last few engineers and mechanics being told to vacate the grid. All the cars have been fired up, I think, barring probably the car that sits on pole position. I can still see the door open on Mark Smith's car. And then the Paddock Motorsport McLaren will fire its way into life. Door is pressed down by the mechanic, pick up the slave battery, get behind the wall, and the cars will be off on their final formation lap. Now, Mark Smith so far this weekend has claimed a win in the opening race of the weekend, which was the sprint race. He claimed the win in the pit stop race earlier on today. He won at Donington Park, one of the 3 races that we had there, so he's 3 times a race winner so far this season. The other wins so far this year have gone the way of Darren Kell when he was partnered up with his son James Kell at Donington Park. We saw a win for another car that's not with us this weekend, Simon Orange and Marcus Clutton at Donington Park. And of course we did see the win for the GCAT Racing Porsche in yesterday's pit stop race, which was David Shaw and Greg Caton. We'll see how David Shaw gets on in this one. So off they go then on their formation lap, trying to build some temperature in the controlled Pirelli tyres that all of these cars run. So as they head around the circuit, we can guide you through the grid and tell you who are the drivers that are on board for this final race of the weekend before these cars head to Snetterton for the next races on the 7th and 8th of June. The way that they line up is that Mark Smith is on pole position in the McLaren, and alongside he has got Darren Kell, and it's going to be Peter Ursig and David Shaw in the Audi and the Porsche that are there on row number 2. Row 3 of the grid is the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini. That's Ian Campbell for this race. He's got Graham Tilley for company at the wheel of the other Lamborghini, and then it's going to be Frank Morris who starts behind the wheel of number 63 car, and Michael McInerney who lines up in the Team Parker Racing Porsche. So head on to the next row of the grid. James Cayley will be driving the Uber GT Performance car this time through, and Archie Clark is the leading car in Group GTH in the Feathers Motorsport Aston, which, if I've done the maths right, is leading the championship. Next up is going to be number 30. That'll be Hadley Simpson for this race, and alongside he's got the SVG Motorsport Ginetta of Mark Ellman on row number 6. On row number 7 it's Doc Bush, and alongside Doc is going to be Neil Wallace. Then it's Mac Priestwood, who is next up, alongside the Ocelli Motorsport Aston Martin of Matt Eddles. That is the 8th row of the grid, and the 9th row of the grid is going to be Peter Aronson, who lines up alongside the Innovation Racing, the second of the two Innovation Racing Ginettas, which is Brent Millage, who claimed a win in GTA in the pit stop race earlier on today. So the cars just working their way down through Dingle Dell at the moment. It's a 25-minute race for this final sprint race, as we say, before we then go to Snetterton on the full 300 circuit for rounds 8, 9, 10 and 11 in the early part of June. Silverstone and the Grand Prix circuit greets the drivers in early August before they go back to Donington Park in September. And the season finale, as has been traditional for GT Cup for the last few years, takes place in Norfolk again. Snetterton on the 300 circuit over the weekend of the 11th and the 12th of October. So the cars getting themselves into neat 2x2 order now. The safety car will peel its way right and in towards the pit lane, and for the final time this weekend we're going to be going racing in the GT Cup Championship. An all McLaren front row of the grid. The black and the pink car is Mark Smith, who sits there on pole position. The red car alongside is that of Darren Kell. And for the final time this weekend we'll go racing. It's round 7 of the 2025 GT Cup Championship. The final race here at Brands Hatch. 25 minutes on the clock. Red lights on the gantry. The lights flash their way out now, and Mark Smith and Darren Kell go side by side up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, but Mark Smith has the all-important inside line when they get there, so picks up the early race lead from Darren Kell, with Peter Ursig in the Audi slotting himself through into 3rd position, and David Shaw in the Porsches there in 4th. Group GTC early race lead going the way of Ian Campbell, but it's been a good start by the light blue Porsche of Michael McInerney, who has threaded his way through and ahead of a few cars and is now ahead of Graham Tilley and runs 2nd in Group GTC in the early stages of this race. Group GTB will be being led by the number 80 Porsche. We know that for sure, because that is the only car that is in Group GTB for this weekend. It's safely in the hands of James Cayley, and then we'll pick out also what's going on in Group GTH and, all important, in Group GTA. But the lead cars already starting to head down towards Hawthorne on this first lap of the race. Group GTH early stage lead is going the way of Archie Clark at the wheel of the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin. I've picked that one out. And Group GTA, I think, is going the way of Neil Wallace at the wheel of the BMW. There's problems there for Mac Priestwood, though. The front bumper on that Ginetta is flapping around and is bouncing off the ground, and surely that's going to attract the attentions of the officials. If he carries on with it, he'll notice it, because he'll be making one heck of a noise. And if he's not quite aware what it is, he'd be well advised to bring that car into the pit lane before a black and orange flag is shown to him. But yeah, that is not safe, is it? I would have thought some gaffer tape should sort it, but that's going to cost time, and in a sprint race there's no real time to affect any repairs. So I think we'll see that car probably dive for the pit lane at some point, the Anthony Seddon racing machine. It's not going to do it this time through. As the speed builds, you can see it's just flapping around like crazy. Over the start-finish line goes Matt Priestwood. It's not slowed his pace really. He's still sitting with Matt Eddles at the wheel of that Aston Martin. Archie Clark throws one up the inside of James Cayley. Does he? No, he hangs on to the place from James Cayley. He was in 9th. He remains in 9th place. James Cayley is coming under pressure from that car of behind him. Matt Priestwood. It's the front. Yes, the front splitter has come adrift, hasn't it? The front splitter is coming loose, and that's causing the bumper to vibrate by the look of things. So I do think we will see Matt Priestwood into the pit lane surely at the end of this lap. So he's certainly going to notice the noise that the thing is making, and because of the long stance of the bonnet and the way it slopes down, he probably won't be aware as to what's making that awful noise that he can hear, that banging noise it will be as it bounces up and down off the tarmac. So along the Derek Minter straight, Archie Clark leading Group GT8, but only just though, isn't he? We've seen some good battles from the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin, fighting away largely with Ginettas all weekend, and this time the car he's fighting with is going to be Hadley Simpson at the wheel of the Innovation Racing number 30 Ginetta. That will be for the lead in the early stages of Group GTH, and 9th and 10th places overall. The Aston Martin under pressure. Ginetta jinks out from behind, but he's not going to be able to overtake, I don't think, as they head through Clearway's corner. He's trying on the outside line, and that's still going to be the outside line when they get towards Paddock Hill Bend. In a straight line, the Ginetta had a bit more grunt than the Aston Martin earlier on, and Hadley Simpson has got the job done here. So Hadley Simpson picks up the place, but more importantly, now leads Group GTH. So brilliant stuff from him. We saw a good race earlier on when Steve Griffiths did the whole pit stop race solo and just missed out on the group win. Group GTC leading cars, the top four altogether, as they exit Graham Hill Bend. Ian Campbell, Michael McInerney, Graham Tilley, and then Frank Morris. So that's going to be Lamborghini from Porsche. And into the pit lane, yeah, I'm not surprised. Matt Priestwood brings the unfortunate Anthony Seddon Racing number 73 Ginetta into the pit lane, and it looks like they're going to retire that car, sadly. So they'll have inspected the damage, and yeah, maybe whatever is causing that front splitter to have come adrift is not repairable in the sprint race, or not worth doing in the sprint race. So it looks like they're going to pop that car into the garage and park it up for the day, I'm afraid. Good fight going on for third and fourth. The Audi of Peter Ursig being kept very honest by David Shaw, who I've been hugely impressed with this weekend. He was at Donington Park testing, but opted not to race that weekend. He just didn't feel as comfortable in the car as he wanted to. And under the tutorage of Greg Caton, with a bit more confidence and maybe a bit more testing, he's out at Brands Hatch, which is, I would say, probably more challenging than Donington Park, and has done a brilliant job. Certainly his stint in the pit stop race yesterday to keep that car where it needed to be, so that when Greg Caton took over, they grabbed a win in the GCAT Racing Porsche. So it's been a solid weekend from David Shaw, and certainly something to build on for the rest of the season, I would say. Confidence will build, the speed will naturally come. He'll get used to the car ever more. He's got Greg Caton offering lots and lots of advice, and I think that could be a car to watch out for as the season builds. Just threading his way out of Surtees behind the Audi of Peter Ursig as they start to head down towards Hawthorne, and then as they head round through Hawthorne, round through Druids, goes another fight that we've got going on, and that will be Neil Wallace at the wheel of the BMW. He's got Matt Eddles right behind him. Then it will be the number 99 car, which will be Mark Ellman for this race in the SVG Motorsport Ginetta, followed by Doc Bush in the Porsche. So it's a Group GTA BMW from a Group GTH Aston Martin, a Group GTH Ginetta, and then a Group GTC Porsche. All very much matched for pace for 12th, 13th, 14th and 15th places. In a straight line, Doc Bush has more grunt at the wheel of the Cup spec car, works his way past and through Mark Ellman, who is driving what in reality is a GT4 homologated car. So the Cup car, a lot more grunt in a straight line, but probably doesn't have quite the aero of the GT4 car. And then we've got the American Peter Aronson, and then Brent Millage at the wheel of the second of the two Innovation Racing Ginettas. Matt Eddles thought about a move up the inside of the Group GTA leading BMW, but decided better of it as they threaded their way through Stirling's that time through. Is he going to get a run on the car as they head over the start-finish line? The BMW is a GT4 car, like the Aston Martin, but it's an older homologation of a GT4 car, and the newer homologated Aston Martin draws itself alongside as the inside line. Is Matt Eddles going to be brave enough? No, not quite, understandably so. First weekend of racing in this car, so just still trying to understand the car and not wanting to push it in the final race of the weekend. Opts to just tuck behind. The great big gaping mouth on the Aston Martin, gulping that ambient air into the radiator and into the brake ducts as well. Almost looks like a basking shark, doesn't it? So wide is the grille on the Aston Martin, but it is a great looking car. It sounds fantastic as well, the turbocharged machine. And he is keeping up with the BMW in a straight line though. Will he be able to keep up with the number 75 Porsche, the Team Parker Racing Porsche, in the hands of Doc Bush? So the Aussie will look to see if he can close in. And also closing in the battle for second and third place is Peter Ursig, starting to catch Darren Kell now, whilst disappearing up the road is Mark Smith at the wheel of the number 10 Paddock Motorsport McLaren. So he's had a solid season so far as Mark Smith. He grabbed a step on the podium, each single step of the podium he stood on at Donington Park the opening weekend of the season, a third, a second and a first, and so far this weekend he's had 2 wins and a third, so he's yet to finish off the overall podium so far this year, the American that leads. Darren Kell in second place, driving solo this weekend. He was partnered up with his son James Kell at Donington Park, but James will reappear later on in the championship season. But James is also busy with his own racing career at the moment, racing in the GT World Challenge Europe, both doing sprint and endurance. So he'll be out racing at Zandvoort this weekend, hopefully getting on well. And his father's gone well this weekend at the wheel of his car, the number 88 car, which finished 5th in the first race of the weekend. It repeated that feat in the pit stop race and was 2nd earlier on today, which is where he lies at the moment, but he's under big pressure from Peter Ursig. So the Antipodean sitting there in 3rd place. David Shaw still sitting with them as well in the GCAT Racing Porsche, the winning car from the pit stop race yesterday, as they thread their way with 16 minutes to go out of Clearways and then on towards Clark Curve and the Brabham Straight. Very short straight really, the start-finish line here at Brands Hatch. Uphill as well as you approach Paddock Hill Bend. A few little bumps to deal with, and then of course you've got that real roller coaster ride where again, blind entry to Paddock Hill Bend, you can't see it, you brake, you turn in, you commit to the apex, and you certainly need to make sure that you don't run wide at the exit of it, otherwise you'll be over the curbs and into the gravel trap if you're not careful. Now Graham Tilley trying to get the overlap on Michael McInerney there to see if he could squeeze his way through into 6th position, but the light blue Porsche still just ahead at this stage. Graham Tilley, new to this Lamborghini for this season, having raced Mercedes GT3 cars in GT Cup for a good number of years, also raced the big Nissan, didn't he, for a few years, and Ginettas, done Caterham racing in the past, and first started racing back in the 1970s in Formula 4, did Graham Tilley. He has stacks of racing experience, as I alluded to earlier on. He is very focused on his fitness as well. He's into his 70s, I think now, early 70s, Graham, but is as fit as anybody on the grid, and is still as quick as well. And he is giving Michael McInerney a thing or two to think about here. Lamborghini tried to squeeze its way past, but the gap isn't going to be prized open there. They're fighting over 2nd and 3rd in Group GTC. Downhill through Dingle Dell. They start to squabble. Don't rule out the fact that the next car in Group GTC, which is Frank Morris at the wheel of the number 63 Lamborghini Super Trofeo car, might close in as well. It does seem as though the way that the technical team have balanced the performance of the Porsches to the Lamborghinis this year is pretty good, to say the least. Very little to choose between them. And the same with the GT3 cars. You know, there's nothing to choose between the GT3 McLaren, the GT3 Audi, and the GT3 Porsche of David Shaw that sits behind. So all of the cars, some are normally aspirated, some are turbocharged, some are twin turbo, some are front engined, some are mid-engined. Trying to equate all of that to make sure that regardless of what engine you've got and what chassis manufacturer you're utilising, that the performance of the cars is pretty much identical. And case in point, 3 cars squabbling over 2nd, 3rd and 4th in the race overall, 2nd, 3rd and 4th in GT3. And then we've got this other little squabble that's going on between Porsches and Lamborghinis for places in Group GTC. So out of the left-hander at Surtees, starting to build the speed again as we're heading towards pretty much the halfway point of the race before too much longer. Graham Tilley again with another good run on Michael McInerney, but unfortunately the straight not quite long enough to draw the Lamborghini alongside, and Michael McInerney understandably was looking defensive with his approach towards Hawthorne, but this time through, up the inside goes Graham Tilley, a better run coming out of Hawthorne, and he squeezes his way through to gain the place, and that's now going to put him up to 2nd in Group GTC at this stage. And that will also net him 6th overall in the race. So 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th altogether. Lamborghini, Porsche, Lamborghini, Porsche. The car at the tail end of this little quartet is a Group GTB car. So it's a slightly older Cup spec car, and therefore, because it's 5 years or more older, it sits in Group GTB rather than the newer trio of cars that lie ahead, which sit in Group GTC. That's not stopping James Cayley trying to sit with Frank Morris. So through Paddock Hill Bend, James Cayley, I thought, was going to run a little bit wide there, but then just took as wide a sweep into the corner as he could at the wheel of the Uber GT Performance machine. Now for our race leader, we've got the traffic. Now, it's a good job that Mark Smith has built an advantage, because he can take his time threading his way through the traffic, which he is trying to do on the approach towards Sheen Curve. Neil Wallace sees the blue flags almost at the last minute and just is able to let the race leader squeeze through. But for Darren Kell, for Peter Ursig and for David Shaw, they are all together. They cannot afford to be compromised by this traffic. And Mark Smith is safely through. Darren Kell now squeezes his way past Mark Ellman's car. Peter Ursig gets probably a slightly better run through that little part of traffic. But how many more cars can Darren Kell pick off on the start-finish line? That might be the key to this one. He's going to weave his way up the inside of Doc Bush, but Peter Ursig also manages to do so. And then on the run up towards Druids, there's another 2 further cars for them to pick out in their squabble for second and for third places. And for Darren Kell, he's able to get past Neil Wallace. Peter Ursig has to wait until the exit of Druids to squeeze his way through, and he's just able to do so before they get towards the braking area for Graham Hill Bend, whereas delayed was the car that was in 4th place, which was David Shaw. So he's lost out through the traffic, finally picks them off at the end of the Cooper Straight. So it's McLaren, from Audi, from Porsche, from Lamborghini, Porsche, Lamborghini, Porsche, and Ginetta, the top 10 at the moment. Now, James Cayley looking as though he's got through and ahead of Frank Morris now on this lap, so that's a position gained, and that must have happened at Paddock Hill Bend, because as they came over the start-finish line, James Cayley was behind the Lamborghini by 0.4 of a second. Well, by the time they got towards Druids, he was ahead of him. So the number 63 car losing out there to the sole car running in Group GTB this weekend, or today at least. We had James Walpole in the KTM Crossbow running in Group GTB yesterday. But as was the case at Donington Park, he raced on the Saturday but was not able to race on the Sunday. And for James Cayley, he is now asking a few questions of Michael McInerney. So you can see the subtle differences in the tail lights of the car and the rear end of the car, indicating that one is one of the 9911 spec cars and one is the 9912 spec car. Also see some subtle changes also on the front grills of the car and the front valances of them, as the Porsche Cup car has developed over the years. So through the left-hander at Stirling's, 10 minutes to go. James Cayley fighting away with a car for overall position, but it won't be any more championship points if he gets past it. But desperate to try and see if he can haul himself up from 8th to 7th place as they flash their way back over the start-finish line, and now complete what for them will be lap number 10. Our race leader, Mark Smith, leading now by 4.4 seconds. You can see the relative gap between himself and Darren Kell, who still has not shaken away Peter Ursig. So Peter Ursig at Donington Park, when he shared the car with Hugo Cook, they had a 5th, the 4th, and they had a 3rd. So far this weekend, Peter Ursig started the weekend with a 2nd place, which was a good result for him. He backed that up with another 2nd position in the pit stop race yesterday when he was partnered up with Marcus Clutton, and had another 3rd place earlier on today, which is where he sits at the moment in this one with 9 minutes to go, and was just 0.5 of a second behind Darren Kell at the start of the lap. That comes out to 0.6 of a second this time through as they go through. But in 4th place, the Porsche has just set the fastest lap of the race, the number 27 car, the all-black car from GCAP Racing in the hands of David Shaw. 1 minute 25.745 from him. That's him the fastest lap of the race. And with that, we'll also go an extra championship point. And that could all be important come the totting up at the end of the season. I did say earlier on that David Shaw, so I think, could one to be watched by the end of the year. I think himself and Greg Caton are going to be a good partnership. 8.5 minutes to go. Out of Surtees. Pilgrim's Drop. Up towards Hawthorne goes our race leader. And then we'll have pretty much the whole length of the Derek Minter Straight, I would have thought, between himself and the squabble that's there for 2nd and 3rd places, with David Shaw still just trying to play catch-up as he sits there in 4th place. He's not quite close enough, is he, to the pair ahead, the McLaren of Darren Kell, the Audi, and then there's contact by the look of things. Frank Morris tries to sneak up the inside of Michael McInerney. James Cayley was there as well, 3 wide going in towards Druids, was never quite going to work, and I'm afraid Frank Thomas has come off the worst as a result of that. So there's contact between certainly 2 of them. Whether all 3 had a little bit of side-to-side contact, but Frank Thomas is sideways, some damage to his car. The nose of it's almost touching the barrier, but hopefully he'll be able to grab a gear and rejoin the race. He's still stricken up there at Druids, I believe, at the moment. So that'll be covered by localised yellow flags with 7.5 minutes to go, and that's where our race leaders will be heading up towards now. Should still see the Lamborghini on the grass on the inside of the corner, and it has not moved as yet. It's in a fairly safe place where it's come to rest, actually, because it's right up against the barriers on the inside. So certainly I think it's safe to just cover that with waved yellow flags for a couple of laps, and after that then bring the flags in once the drivers have seen where the car is, because it's in an unusual place to end up, really. So 6 3/4 minutes to go. Frank Thomas does grab a gear and he's going to be able to continue. So looks as though all 4 tyres are inflated. There's no obvious signs of any damage to any dive planes or anything either, or little windlets on the car, so I think it must have been just the lightest of touches between the pair of them. In the meantime, now our race leader Mark Smith sets the fastest lap, 1:25.717, so he picks up the extra point for the moment for the fastest lap. And as for the squabble for 2nd, 3rd and 4th, well, David Shaw in the Porsche, for my money, is edging closer to the rear bumper of the Audi of Peter Ursig. Last time through, Ursig did a 1:26.2. There's a 1:26.1 from David Shaw. So through they'll come over the start-finish line. In fact, James Kell was the slowest of the 3 because he did a 1:26.3. So he was a 10th slower than the Audi. The Audi was a 10th slower than the Porsche. They're closing up. And this time when they come through, all 3 of them are separated by about 1.5 seconds. That's all. So up towards the braking area for Druids. Darren Kell was flashing his lights there, which was suggesting that there was a little bit of traffic maybe that he was coming up towards, but the road looks fairly clear ahead of him at the moment. So out of Graham Hill Bend, along the Cooper Straight, and in towards Surtees with now just 5.5 minutes remaining and 13 laps completed go the squabble for 2nd, 3rd and 4th place, and our race leader Mark Smith just edging away from them all of the time. That time through, another 0.3 seconds he managed to gain in his lead advantage over the trio behind, so the lead gap is now up to 5.4 seconds. Leading Group GTA is still the BMW, but there's going to be quicker cars coming up to lap Neil Wallace and the car that he's doing battle with, which is the Aston Martin of Matt Eddles, and that car will be Ian Campbell, who leads Group GTC, sneaking his way through and up the inside. He leads Group GTC and lies 5th overall. James Cayley still leads Group GTB. Group GTH is still being led by Hadley Simpson and the number 30 Ginetta. And Group GTA, as we say, is that BMW. As over the start-finish line come the trio, fighting over what is just 2 podium spots. So 3 cars, 2 trophies up for grabs. Someone's going to go home disappointed. And at the moment, that is David Shaw, because he sits there in 4th place in the Porsche. Fastest lap of the race again has gone to Mark Smith that time through. Yet further improvement, 1:25.325 that time through. So that was nearly 0.8 seconds quicker than Darren Kell could manage in 2nd position. And case in point is just how equally matched these 3 cars are fighting over 2nd, 3rd and 4th place. Darren Kell, 2nd place, 1:26.1. Peter Ursig, 3rd place, 1:26.1. David Shaw, 4th place, 1:26.0. Just 0.1 seconds separating the last lap times from all 3 of them. So it really is a cracking little battle between them all. The track focus from McLaren hanging on to it, but only just from the JMH Automotive Audi. And then just off the back of those is the GCAT Racing Porsche. So up towards Dingledell for the 15th time, then flicking their way through the left-hander at Stirling's. And then as they come over the start-finish line this time through, I think there's enough time on the clock when Mark Smith comes through. He's lapping in about 1:25 at the moment, so he will go over the start-finish line and have 3 more laps to do. The one he started and 1 more thereafter. Had a bit of traffic to deal with there, and that was the Group GTH leading car of Archie Clark that he squeezed his way through and passed. But when you've got now nearly a 7-second advantage, you can just afford to pick your moment. You don't need to try and rush your way through the traffic, and Mark Smith will be more than wise to that. He's got enough experience now to know what he's doing, lapping the slower cars. And you know, if you have to give up 0.5 seconds, just give it up, because you've got 7 seconds in hand and only 3 minutes on the clock, so it's not going to do you too much of a disadvantage. Now, can David Shaw do anything about Peter Ursig? Looks as though he's a little bit quicker in the rear-engine Porsche, heading out of Surtees that time through. He's sitting fully in the slipstream of the Audi as they head towards Hawthorne, but again, in a straight line, they are pretty much evenly matched for pace. So the rear-engine Porsche perhaps a little bit quicker getting out of the corner, but just can't utilise any more grunts because they both hit sort of top speed at exactly the same time, and being GT3 cars, they need to be on the brakes at pretty much an identical time. So it's all going to be to do with pressurising the car ahead, see whether see whether there's a small little Achilles heel that you can find. And if needs be, then just, press the point, see if you can get a mistake, or even if they are half a car offline, that might just be enough to give you a bit of an overlap somewhere. But for the moment, Peter Ursig driving as he has done for a good number of years now. Very, very well indeed. Minute and 40 to go as they go over the start-finish line. So on to the penultimate lap of the race this time through. And traffic to deal with for James Kell, who flashes the lights. Archie Clark says, not just yet though, I don't want to compromise my race. You'll have to wait until the exit of the corner to squeeze your way through, and Darren Kell should do that on the run down in towards Graham Hill Bend. Peter Ursig decisively dives up the inside of the Aston Martin as well, because he does not want to lose time to a back marker trying to squeeze his way through. David Shaw has to wait until the Cooper straight to do so, and the three of them, by the time they get towards Surtees, are still very much together for second, for third and for fourth position. But in a straight line, we know that all of them are pretty much equally matched, which is brilliant to see. Nobody has got an advantage, whether it be a McLaren, whether it be an Audi, whether it be a Porsche. They are equivalent in terms of the performance around here, certainly with the drivers we've got on board at the moment. And, of course, the pros cannot take part in the sprint races. So it's all down to the gentleman drivers, the sporting drivers as they're called, the AMs, whatever you wish to call them. So second, third and fourth, all Group GT3 cars as well. Flicking their way through the left-hander at Stirling's. Peter Ursig just dropping away from Darren Kell by half a car length. As over the start-finish line to start the last lap of the race amongst traffic comes Mark Smith, our race leader. Now, these GT3 cars should catch that batch of traffic on this lap as well, so that could play a pivotal role in who finishes second, third and fourth in this race, because they will certainly be lapping quicker than the Group GTH cars. Quickest lap we've seen from a Group GTH car is around about 1 minute 32, so it's about 7 seconds, 8 seconds slower than the GT3 cars are doing. So down through Graham Hill Bend goes Darren Kell. There's a train of traffic just heading out of Surtees. And Darren Kell is going to catch that, I suspect, somewhere around Sheen Curve and Stirling. Mark Smith is still trying to weave his way past them, but of course he's got the time in hand to be able to do so, and rather conveniently he's met them on the straight heading down in towards Hawthorne, so he should clear all of that traffic by Hawthorne. Whereas for Darren Kell, he'll be looking forward out the windscreen, seeing that it's a very busy piece of Kent real estate ahead of him, be thinking, oh no, we've got the twisty sections, we've got the technical sections at Dingledale and Sheen Curve, and Stirling's coming up, and I said he'd meet them at Stirling's, and that's exactly where he's going to meet the first of those cars. It's going to be just on the exit of Stirling's where he meets Brent Millage, and that is a bit of a let-off for him. That really helps him, because in a straight line he can carve his way past that one. He might have another one that he'll catch just on the approach towards Clearways Corner, but he, I think, has just about done enough here to be able to grab second. The win is going to go the way of Mark Smith. Congratulations to him for another solid weekend. It is going to be in second place, Darren Kell in second place in the McLaren. The Audi of Peter Ursig comes through to finish in third place, just ahead of David Shaw, who completes the top four. Fifth place should be Ian Campbell. We get the Group GTH winning car already through and over the start-finish line, I believe, which is going to be Hadley Simpson, and we've just seen Archie Clark come through to finish in 10th place in the Aston Martin. That will be second in Group GTH. The Group GTA car also was lapped towards the end, which will be Neil Wallace, so he will be the Group GTA winner in the number 24 BMW. But we've still got the Group GTC winner and the Group GTB winner to come over the start-finish line. Group GTC going the way of Ian Campbell, who is going to doubly repay Top Cats Racing for their 3 a.m. finish, because himself and Fraser Fenwick won the pit stop race earlier on and are about to make it 2 out of 2 today in Group GTC when they head over the start-finish line any second now. The rest of the cars all feeding their way through and into the pit lane area, and I think over the start-finish line now will come the winner of Group GTC. So a difficult day yesterday for Fraser Fenwick and Ian Campbell, but they are going to win Group GTC today. Finishing in 5th place overall, with Graham Tilley coming through to finish in 6th position. James Cayley in the Group GTB car did really well again, mixing amongst some of the quicker Group GTC cars, and Michael McKinney is going to be the last of those to take the checkered flag. He will ultimately complete the Group GTC podium, finishing in 8th place overall, and he was the last car to finish on the lead lap as well. So all of the cars making their way in towards the pit lane area. It's been a great weekend of racing here for our second weekend of the 2025 championship season, so let's confirm the results then. It's a win for Mark Smith, And in second place, it's Darren Kell with Peter Ursig not that far away in third, and David Shaw completing the top four. The Group GTC win went the way of Ian Campbell, who was there in fifth position, with Graham Tilley in sixth place, just half a second behind. James Cayley won Group GTB in seventh place. Michael McKinney was in eighth place, and in ninth place, Hadley Simpson took the win in Group GTH, with Archie Clark finishing second in GTH and 10th overall. 11th place overall was Frank Morris after the spin, and in 12th place, Neil Wallace came home in the BMW GT4 to scoop up the win in Group GTA. Matt Eddles was 13th, had a Doc Bush 14th, Peter Aronson 15th, Brent Millage was 16th. We lost Mark Ellman somewhere along the way, and we know of the problems with the front valance of Matt Priestwood's Ginetta, which brought him into the pit lane very early indeed. So if I've done the maths right, the championship will still be close as we head to Snetterton next time out, and I think the championship leading car will be Archie Clark and Tom Canning for Feathers Motorsport. So that's it from us from Brands Hatch. I hope you enjoyed the racing, but please join us next time out when we'll be at Snetterton on the 300 circuit for rounds 8, 9, 10 and 11 of the championship over the weekend of the 7th and the 8th of June. From Brands Hatch, from Buick Motorsport, from GT Cup and from Onside Productions, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.